you've had a pretty cool story that I thought would be good to share with people, very inspirational to people, all inspired by someone that many of us have heard of and is dear to our heart, which is Hannah Francis and the Wilbury Wonderberry charity, wasn't it? Your desire to go forwards and jump and improve your riding. Was it not Hannah that inspired you? I thought it was. No, it wasn't at all.
No, sorry.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fine. Wasn't inspired by Hannah.
Inspiring.
She is inspiring, however. Well, there we go. Got that completely wrong. So tell us, what did inspire you to come from where you were to where you're at, and tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself. And then I will pick up the right story in a moment and go from there.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's fine.
So I'm 54. I work full time. I'm a mother of 2 adult children. Always ridden all my life, but not always had my own horse. And was then lucky enough to have my own horse. Unfortunately, had a very bad injury to my right leg, which resulted in snapping just about every single ligament in my knee and snapping all the bones in it, literally across the top of them all. So I had to have massive reconstruction. And that horse went, and I had a swap who was a very nice horse, very sweet natured, but never really got my bottle back, never really got that confidence and that real, I can do this and I'm doing it and loving it. It was always feeling slightly nervy. And that came to a peak about 4 years ago after I had an accident at work, which resulted in snapping the ligaments in my left foot. And again, had that all reconstructed. And by this stage, felt very broken and middle-aged and very fragile, for want of a better description. And I was at a dressage competition, and I got to the point where I thought, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not enjoying it. Quite frankly, I've paid some money to be here and I'm loathing every minute. And bumped into the very lovely Tina Canton, who got chatting to me because she saw me on my walking sticks. I have to walk with a stick now, and because I'm permanently disabled. And she was saying how she'd got a bad knee and everything else. And my comment was, how do you do what you do at your level with the accidents you have, the falls, the tumbles, the experiences you have, and you get back on? And from the outside looking in, without any issues, without ever feeling like you're bricking it, to put it bluntly. And she said that she had a sports psychology coach and to befriend her on Facebook, and she'd give the details, which is when I then befriended you and watched your videos. And that's where the journey started, really. So thank you very much, Jenny.
So yeah, I don't know why I thought Hannah came into that somewhere along the line. I think it's because you wanted to jump again, maybe, and do some of that stuff. And I thought,
I think it's probably that, and start doing the BEAT route.
Yes, so that's probably where it came from. Yeah, because a lot of people that said they want to start doing the BEAT stuff is because of the Wobbleberry challenge, which is doing just that. So that's fair enough. Okay, so you met Tina. And what was it then that meant that you decided something had to change from your perception of what your body could do, what your body couldn't do, because it's a funny old thing, the brain body link. Like, there are definitely physical limitations. Like, that definitely happens. Like, physically, you aren't able to do something with a limb or what have you. But actually, at the same time, it's also about what you believe about your body, isn't it? So tell us a little bit more about that kind of body journey for you.
Well, I suppose the biggest thing is that it's my left foot and it's my right knee. And I also have a broken back. So, a lot of stiffness, a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort. But also I am disabled and walk with a stick and have an adapted car and all of that sort of stuff. And it was realizing that those weren't going to be limitations. They would make me different, perhaps. They would give me a different challenge. But with the right frame of mind and the right support in place, I could do it. And it was working with Tina, who then I now go to for coaching. And we never do jumping. We just do raised poles, which works for my head. Dealing with demons, I think I would call it. Working out what it was in the past that gave me the hang-ups, gave me the issues, and confronting them head on, instead of always thinking, well, that's in the past, it doesn't matter. Actually, the past did matter very much for me. And it was quite interesting to see how things from the past connected to how I was in the modern day, in the here and now. And so I saw the sort of training my brain and training my body and my horse as one and the same, and spent a lot of time actually with pen and paper at my desk, planning what I was going to do and when I was going to do it. And obviously that sometimes goes wrong. I mean, for me, diet is a big issue, and I have a really rubbish diet and a serious gin addiction. And so sometimes that doesn't always go how I'd like it to go. But the sort of determination to sort it out, to address my demons, did actually mean that I've evented now to 70 centimetres and been placed and enjoyed it. I've gone out competing on my own and enjoyed it. I go out and do elementary dressage and love it. And ride it well, get good scores and come back with a first place, which sounds stupid, but for me, I didn't want to be just a participant. I wanted to be a competitor. And there was a big difference to me in between those two things. Being a participant is what you do when you do a leisure ride, a pleasure ride, or whatever you call them. But when I go to a dressage competition, I compete. And just, things like you taught me about being in my own bubble, ignoring what other people think, the fact that I have a mounting block the size of a small house and takes 2 people to get it on and off a trailer. And in the past, I sort of would look around and think, oh God, I hope no one's noticing, so I look like I'm moving in. To now thinking, actually, if you want to borrow it, help yourself, because it's great, it's really stable. And if you've got a spooky youngster, go for it, because it's brilliant. So it's just changing the way you think about things.
That's amazing. And it does make a difference so much, doesn't it? Because you haven't actually changed anything physically in that respect at all. No. As in, you still use that block, for instance, and things like that. It's just learning to accept it and accept that it's just a part of enabling you to do what you love. And then one thing I did want to ask you, though, was when you first came to me, you were very focused on what you couldn't do, very focused on what your body wasn't able to do, the things that were holding you back, what frustrations you had, what challenges you had. So tell me a little bit about what changed in order to change that focus, because when you're in that mindset, it can be really quite hard to get out of it, can't it? That's why you came to me, because you were stuck there.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think the first one was I would catastrophize everything. So, the paper bag in the hedge, even hacking out, would be a massive issue for me. Whereas now we come across all sorts of things where I keep my horse, trucks, lorries, farm equipment, and it's fine. The worst thing we do is we stop and have a gulp at something together, the horse and I, and then we carry on. I've realised that I can fall off and I'm fine. I might be winded. I might feel awful the next day, but I can get back on my horse. And actually falling off again and not ending up in an ambulance was a really big deal. It was good. It was a good exercise, if that can be. I think the other thing for me is that I've had a total knee replacement recently, and that was a really big deal, going under the knife again, because the last time I went under the knife, I came out disabled. And this time it's been quite successful. And instead of seeing it as sort of, oh God, I'm going to have to hang up my boots, that's it now forever, it was just like, I actually planned for a break, and I planned then to pick up the reins again. So straight went back to when I had my competition last weekend, having my competition checklist, having my 3 goals in place. And I was stunned by how exhausted and how much pain I was in afterwards. But it was euphoric to be able to get out there and do it again. And I think actually we need to tap into that euphoria as riders more often and see that as kind of a top up to the energy bank and the positivity bank, because we so often criticize ourselves, and we look through our dressage sheet and we're looking for 5s, aren't we? We're looking for 4s and 5s, and why didn't the judge like my horse? And actually change it and go, I'm really pleased because I got consistently 7s and 8s, and that's brilliant. I'm really chuffed with that. So I think it was sort of remembering all those tools that you put in my toolkit for me, and then continuing to apply them, and it was like practice doing good practice. Does that answer that question? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so it's changing the focus from what you can't do to what you can. Just constantly making yourself look at the positive, having a plan, feeling back in control of things a little bit more, rather than letting something that is out of your control, which is a physical limitation or something, because you've done everything you could to change it and it doesn't, fine. Yeah. But bring it back into, well, what can I do then? What am I able to do something about?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, cool. I think so. Yeah. And also thinking about, rather than setting yourself unrealistic targets, think, right, let's do this in careful stages. So get riding again, do some schooling again, go for the dressage competition, make some appointments with your coaches to pick up your training again, so that every time you feel like you've got an achievement, rather than straight away going, right, bang, I'm in at an 80, and then wondering why you can't do it. I think it's, a big part of it is being realistic, so that you do what you teach other people to do. You wouldn't teach someone to do a cordon bleu dinner party if you were teaching them to cook. So why do we do it with ourselves with horse riding? It's that kind of thing, Jenny.
And it's so true, isn't it? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? And often I think a lot of it is the expectation of others, the shoulds. We love a should. That other people say, oh, you should be doing this, or yourself saying, I should be doing that, just because other people are doing it. But I love that analogy of the cordon bleu dinner party, because you wouldn't have a clue. And even if you did have a clue what it involved, you'd know you'd have to keep practicing at it and breaking it down and doing the little bits. But for some reason in riding, just because we did it before, we expect to be able to do it again. Or even if we haven't done it before, we expect to be able to just say we're going to do it. And it's this quick fix mentality that can get in the way, isn't it?
I think so. There is no quick fix. It's the long journey, and I think it's also taking into account your horse's physiology. The fact if you've had a break because you've lost your nerve, or you've had a blip somehow, that perhaps your horse has also had a blip. He's had a confidence break, and it's building the pair of you up so that you both enjoy it again. For me, that was really important. And that we did some long-term goal setting when you were working with me. And that, for me, was formative. I mean, even now, I'm sitting here with my diary in front of me, but for 2021, we already have the plan. That's already coming into play. So
Amazing.
There's not a lot in there yet, but there will be. And then I put that onto a bigger plan just for me and the horse, and then try and break it down into weekly, because my biggest problem, as you know, is my work-life balance, and my job's quite demanding. And actually my one target when I go back in September to work is work-life balance. I'm not staying at work till 6. I'm actually going to leave on time so that I can look after my health, but also go and enjoy my riding, rather than doing it at the end of the week when I'm absolutely knackered.
And I think that's a really key part, isn't it? That a lot of people, riding is their hobby, so it might take second fiddle to other things. But then they expect from it the high performance, or the results, or the speed that they'd get from something that was number one priority. And so tell us a little bit more then about that kind of idea of work-life balance, because it's all very well saying, right, I'm going to leave at 5 or what have you, I'm going to do that, but then something gets in the way. What is it that for you means that you actually, and it's a great topic for this week, so we've been talking about accountability all week, so what is it that means you actually hold yourself to account and you make it happen? Because actually you've done that the whole way through this journey. You said, I'm going to do that, and you've done it. You haven't just kind of gone, oh yeah, and then not put it into practice.
I suppose as an individual, I'm very task orientated. That works for me. So I'm a great list maker. But what I shall be doing is I've spent time, because schools have lots of meetings. We love a good meeting as teachers. So what I do is I plan out all the meetings that I'm committed to for the year. I also look at all the pinch points, like reporting dates and things like that. And then I will plan around that, which days I'm riding. One day is going to be my evening out, where I know I'll be late from work. So why not just go and get my nails done, or my eyebrows, or my hair, or whatever, because God knows they need it. But the other thing for me was thinking about where the competitions fall and what I've got to do, what my commitment is, to make sure that when I go there, I'm not just attending, I'm actually going there fully prepared. So that's perhaps saying, right, I have one coaching session a month with Tina, and then I'm aiming for a competition at the end of the month, and making sure then that the weeks in between, I've got time to implement the coaching, because otherwise you're just throwing money into the air, but also making sure that I stick to my plan. So I will do a lot of work during the holidays, so that work is not lastminute.com. I'm not planning assemblies or something the night before. They'll all be done. But also, I think women particularly have this thing where we tend to be a little bit guilty, particularly women of a certain age, where we should be at home with the kids or making meals or whatever. And I don't think that's always my responsibility. My kids are growing up now, so I think it's my turn. And I think it's having that mantra that I owe myself that time, because otherwise I'm not going to be the best that I can be in terms of the best type of person. Because sometimes you're so work driven, you actually become a bit grumpy and a bit unpleasant to be around. Having those goals, I think, also then makes you feel less resentful, And I think that's important in your mental health, and particularly with sort of what we've gone through with lockdown. For a lot of people, getting back into competition, along with the sort of the worry of what's going on in the background, the fear of going back to work, perhaps. I mean, for me, I'm teaching a lot of kids in zones. That whole fear of, we're not allowed to wear face masks in school. We've been open all the way through, and I think been open all the way through and haven't got ill. Therefore, I will be okay. So will the boys I look after, and that means that I'm also then entitled to that time at the end of the day to go and do something that's for me, that I enjoy, and that takes me to my next stage, that I can be the best version of myself. And I think it's really important that we do that, and we plan to do that. And I think lockdown's given me the time to think that through, because normally we're on a treadmill, aren't we? Work. And suddenly you've got time to think about what's really mattered to you and what has made you feel happy. And I think that sort of gives you that accountability element as well. Because only you can be responsible for yourself.
Exactly.
But ultimately it's me, isn't it?
Yeah, you can get all the support you want, but I'm not going to do it for you. Sorry. I've got enough of my own stuff to do. I can't do it for everyone else as well. So there were some key points there that I heard from you. And one is that it's about having negotiation with yourself. And there is actually something that I think we did at one point, which is called a parts negotiation, which is where when you're in two minds about something, or you're push and pull, and you're stuck in the middle of your own brain, and it literally feels like two minds, like there's not one or the other that is obviously the one you want to do. So you negotiate the two, and you go, okay, well, we've got to come to an agreement here. You need a bit of this, you need a bit of that. How are we going to do it? And it's always about balance, isn't it? But the thing with balance is never static. Balance has always got a bit of sway and flow to it, and it's being all right with when you come off on a sway one way, going, okay, well, that's no problem. I'm just going to catch it and knock it back. But in doing that, you'll probably sway it a bit the other way and catch it and knock it back. So most of the time, you're probably going to be centre line, but you're going to have a lot of sway in between, and being all right with that. So the other things that I heard there were, one really important thing, it's all very well to say and think and learn and discover and plan, but actually implementation is really the key there. You've got to do the do. And I think a lot of people don't do that bit. I think a lot of people talk about mindset, talk about positivity, but actually do they do it? So what was it that meant that you did it?
The mood board. You encouraged me to make a mood board with, at the bottom, negative images of myself and things that actually, a competition that went really well for me. I went on my own, I enjoyed it, did jumping, wasn't frightened, didn't feel nervy, and I put hash marks over the top, because what I wanted to get to was at the top of the sheet, and I have that on my phone, but I also have it on my pin board in the study. And it's a constant reminder, really, that if I want to get to the top of the sheet, I need to put the things in that are in the middle, which are all my targets, my steps, excuse me, for success. And that actually was a really useful tool. Having it on my phone was particularly good, because every time I took a call or something, I had to look at it. And of course, then you think, I should really be doing this. So get on and do it. Stop excusing it. And of course, nobody knows what's in your diary other than you. So when you've got people making demands on your time, it's okay to say, no, I'm really sorry, I can't do that appointment, but I can do this one. Instead of always being the facilitator and being the one that fits in around everyone else. And that took a bit of practice, because my initial response was, I'm being a bit difficult, I'm being obstructive. I thought, well, actually, no, I'm not. I owe it to myself to go and do X, Y, and Z, because otherwise I could have a crashing fall, because I'm not prepared for my event on Saturday or Sunday. I'm not competing at a big level, but enough of a level that if you do hit the deck, it's a concern for somebody somewhere, isn't it? And it's best to get it right.
So that's awesome. So it's about, everything's about motivation, isn't it? Life is about motivation. It's about what you do want to do, what you don't want to do, what you prioritize, what you don't prioritize, all those kind of things, about like being accountable. And I love that idea that no one else knows what's in your diary. Well, my husband does, but he doesn't understand half of what it is anyway. But yeah. But so when someone puts a demand on you, they don't know how full your diary is, and actually it doesn't matter if they know anyway. It's having those boundaries, isn't it? It's having a very clear set of what is okay and what is not, what you're prepared to flex on and what you're not, what your priorities are. because I'm sure sometimes there's something that comes along that wasn't in the diary that actually is enough of a priority to rearrange something.
Yeah, and particularly the nature of my job, I can be quite often dealing with very reactive people. For example, an irate parent, and by saying, I'm terribly sorry, whilst I understand you're really upset, I'd love to meet with you tonight, but I can't. But I can meet with you on Friday afternoon. Well, actually, 24 hours later, they're probably in a completely different place mentally, and they're nicer. We have a more productive meeting, and they're still grateful that you've stayed behind to meet with them. And actually, they don't know, but in my diary, that's blanked out as my ad hoc meeting day. So I think it's boxing clever and just saying, it's almost like saying those are golden nugget times. That is my time that I'm going to ride my horse, and actually you can go and do what you've got to do, but this is what I'm doing. And be quite focused. When you get to the yard, it's very, well, for me, when I get home, it's very easy to start faffing at home. When I get to the yard, there's always, they don't deliberately do it, but there's always that yard gossip that will come up and want a good old chinwag and tell you about their week. And I've learned actually that I just shuffle around on my walking stick with various bits of tack hanging off me and say, frankly, sorry, I can't stop because I'll drop the whole lot, because I will. And actually people start moving out your way then. So I think you just have to be a little bit, not rude, but a little bit, never stop, never stand still. Because as soon as you stand still, they've got you, and they'll waste 20 minutes of your time. But if you keep moving, you can tack up and talk. If they want to stand in your stable doorway, that's fine. But when I'm ready to get on, I'll walk straight past them to do that. And I think you have to have that slightly single-minded rudeness to be able to do it. And I think you know that's also that sort of one-track mind, I'd call it. You've gone there with your target, and before you even got there, you've thought about what schooling exercises you're going to do and why you're doing them. You're ahead of the game, I think, and that's really important for me, especially when you ride in the evening when you're probably at your most tired and your brain wants to switch off. So yeah, and I'll plan all my schooling exercises actually on the weekend. Just
cool. So it's using your time effectively. So none of us have any more time, do we? But it's using your time effectively. So planning when you've got the time to do some planning, and then implementing it when you can. And the nice thing about when you've planned something, like you say, and you know what you're going to be doing, is it gives you the motivation and focus to do it. But also it takes the brain power away. Of like, the best thing I ever did was start planning food for the week and just doing an online shopping order for that food. So it stopped you doing, impulse buying. It stopped you nipping to the shop to get something when you were hungry and buying bad choices. And it means that when we're tired at the end of the day, or we're in a hurry, it doesn't matter. We already know what we're having. We just got to do it. Or if I can't make it home and I phone my husband, and because this was the other thing you were talking about, is delegation's really important. You can't do everything. Is to actually go, look, I'm really sorry, but that's what we're having. The recipe book page is that number, because even that's on the planner if we're doing something different. Off you go, have a go at it, and I'll give him a bit of a break if it's not the best meal ever, because he probably has never even done it before, and that's fine. So but when you look at that as you're training and you're riding, that idea of the single track mind is exactly what top athletes have, and they can be seen to be very selfish in that, but it's because you have to have that determination and that single focus, don't you, to get what you want to get done, to achieve a big juicy goal. But it doesn't mean you have to be horrible along the way. You can still be nice to people. So how have you found that balance yourself? Because you're a lovely person. How have you managed to still be nice?
I think going back to Tina, when I saw her at this competition, there was me in the corner, and I hadn't got round to even getting my horse tacked up because I was putting that moment off. I was dreading it. And I was watching this young woman, just a superb rider, riding a super sharp horse that was being a bit of a twonk, to be honest. But she wasn't worried what anyone thought. She obviously had her warm-up routine and she was riding it. And if you got in her way, she just did a very sharp halt transition, pulled a bit of a face and carried on. So people started to give her space because she was quite clearly in the zone and you risked being run over. And it was fascinating to watch. And she didn't make any excuses up either. When one horse was naughty, but, wasn't perhaps as obedient in the dressage as she would have liked, there was no excuse. It came out and she practiced it in the warm-up and then it went on the lorry. Now that to me is absolute genius riding. And I went from that to thinking, what steps do I do to improve? Now, I'm never going to be as good as her, but I can certainly be the best version of me. So getting in touch with you, investing in that, because, you can have the best tack, the best saddle, go for the best lessons, whatever. But if your brain's not in the right place, you're just piddling up against the wall, as my father would have said. And I think also having the time to think rationally through things. Why are you doing it? What is it makes you want to do it? Okay, so what do you put into place? And I've forgotten what your question was because I'm really thick.
No, it was how you're also a nice person, but you described that nicely with Tina, who's great, and we're going to get Tina on one of these for sure. I just suddenly went, Tina, I haven't asked her to come on one. She'd love to. It's just a case of getting it in her diary, but we might have a chance over the summer with a bit less eventing on and no uni. We might be all right. But she is. But she has got that steely determination. But again, she's a really nice person, you know. So it was about how do you do that? No. So how do you kind of bring that into you? Because we know, like, she can do it, but you can do it too. So how do you do it?
Well, I remember many years ago, and I went into teaching quite late in life. So it was 2003 that I started being a teacher, and I trained. I went back to university as a single parent, and I remember somebody saying to me, "Stay away from the drains and hang on to the radiators." And I've always thought it's quite a good philosophy, because a lot of teachers are quite negative, and I always argue that the kids are a doddle. It's the adults that are a pain in the backside to deal with, and it's true of everyday life. So I just always try and be the best version of myself I can be. So obviously there's people on the yard. I'm on a very large livery yard. There are people on there I really cannot abide, but they don't know that, because I'll just be very polite but quite breezy. And people that I do like, or whose opinion I do value, I will seek them out. And I just find there's no need to be rude to people, because that makes you negative and it brings you down. Just learn from it and implement it. You know, the person that wastes your time, just avoid them, or keep moving. And being nice to people. You can be assertive. Think about what you want out of the transaction, in as much that you're not using people, but you have a clear sense that you want to say hello and move on, or you want to ask them if they're turning out, can you turn out at the same time? But that doesn't then need to get into a convoluted conversation about everything else in their life, and it doesn't need to I refuse to get drawn into gossiping about other people, about their horses or how they ride. I'm training as a dressage judge, so I've done my part A's and B's, or 1s and 2s, whatever they are at the minute. And because of COVID, couldn't do the final part. And I find that doing that is also, it gives you the opportunity to observe people